Mike is going to do something a little different. He's going to be diving. It's going to be about, I guess you just took a little stroll up Kilimanjaro, right?
That's correct.
So Mike is going to just come up here and he's going to introduce himself. And so Crazy Mike is on the stage.
Dennis, for inviting me to give a little bit of a presentation. He asked for something most people don't do. It's something unique, and that's kind of been the way of my life all the time. Always trying to do something a little different. So you might say, why Kilimanjaro? How did I get involved in something like that? Well, it goes back to when I was living in China and had some friends, and we always like to talk about doing treks and hiking and what have you. So when I relocated back to the States, I stayed in touch with him. He actually wound up taking my job when I came back to retire. And one of the things we all talked about was let's go to the Himalayas. So actually the start of my Kilimanjaro trip was flying back to China. We went to Tibet, and we went up very near base camp for Mount Everest. Did some trekking up there. And I found it fascinating. It's so different than diving relative when you get up through the different climate zones, get up into the mountains. And I thought, well, I survived 17,000 feet and was doing it pretty well. So I said, so we got talking and we decided Kilimanjaro. Why Kilimanjaro? Well, of all the 7 summits in the continents, Kilimanjaro is the only one that doesn't require technical mountaineering or mountaineering classes or anything like that. They call it a hike. Well, it's a little bit more than just that. So at any rate, we decided to...
No, that's okay. There we go.
We decided to book trips to Kilimanjaro. So we had a team of guys to go over there. Unfortunately, they all got sick and it wound up just me. And so I went solo to Kilimanjaro, and my presentation is basically some PowerPoint presentation of photos that I took during the trek. I'm a little younger there. It was 2008 when I did this. And since this is a photo club, let me tell you what I took for the camera. It's a little Olympus that could fit in my pocket, because weight was critical. We had to carry 25 to 30 pound backpacks. And so I couldn't carry an SLR. So it's just a simple little point and shoot. And I kept it in my down vest so the batteries wouldn't die. Because remember, there's no electricity, nothing to keep it warm. This trek that I'm going to talk about essentially was 9 days long. 7 to get up there and 2 to come down. And so from that, I'll get onto the PowerPoint. And I found, if I can find it here, I was trying to think of when I did this, 2008, I was hardly trying to remember some of the stuff what we did. So I put the presentation together, and after I did it, I actually found my logbook. Wow. And so some of the things are a little different, so I'm going to highlight a couple things as we just flip through some of the slides. All right. Obviously, this is an underwater photo club, so I had to throw something in that reminded me of the mountains. Okay, next slide. Getting there was the same thing. It was 17 hours to get over there. Basically, a flight from Houston to Amsterdam, from Amsterdam then down to Kilimanjaro Airport, which is just outside Arusha in Tanzania, and you can see that on the slide. One of the things we did also after this trip is I had a 3-day safari. I had a choice of doing a safari after the climb or go diving off of Zanzibar. And given all the diving I'd already done around the world, I said, let's just do the safari since I never did a photo safari. And for those of you who have not done it, it was absolutely stunning. And you can see Kilimanjaro on the slide on the right there is just below the Serengeti National Park and the Ngorongoro crater. And that's where we did our safari, but that's another trip. Next. Okay, a little bit about Kilimanjaro itself. It's the highest mountain in Africa, one of the 7 summits of the continent. It's at 19,300 feet. It's got 5 climatic zones that we went through: bushland, rainforest, heather, and all the way up into the Arctic. There are 7 trekking routes that actually go up the mountain. I put down there the Makakme 6-day trip. We actually did the western approach when I found my notes. And it was 7 days up, 2 down. There are other routes that you can climb that are much less time. They have one that's called the Coca-Cola route, and that basically takes you in a off-road vehicle 2/3 of the way up the mountain, then you hike the rest. So, I mean, that's one way to do it. The issue is acclimatization to altitude. So a lot of times the people that do the shorter duration trips, and especially the Coca-Cola, that's why as we get into another side, you'll see the safety record there. 61% succeed. 77% of all the issues is acute mountain sickness. The altitude will definitely take you out. The climbing records, oldest person, 89 years old. And by the way, it was a lady. Okay. Youngest, 7 years old. And some Kenyan ran up the mountain in 4 hours, 56 minutes. I can't even imagine doing that after the trek. Next one. When we got there, this is the first day you get in, you have an acclimatization day. And that was the little huts that we stayed in. And what we did that day is just rest, relax, and then they had a short, what they call walk in the bush. And so the walk in the bush, I didn't have my camera with me, but basically what it was a elderly gentleman with an old shotgun and took us out into the bush. And he says, well, if the lions come, I've got you covered. And I seriously doubted that because it was a shotgun and it looked like it was 60 years old too. But it was interesting. We see all kinds of monkeys and birds and what have you, and it was beautiful. Next slide. That's the inside of my little hut, and it was extremely comfortable. You can see all the netting, and the food was outstanding. So it was a nice way to relax before the trek starts. This is check-in at the Western Approach, and is basically tons and tons of vehicles lining up. People are getting their queue, and what you get your permits and what have you. But also what goes on at this point is the various guides are getting their staging on how people are going up the different routes. So it does, because there's many ways to get there and a lot of people. This is our porters. What surprised me, we started out with 8 trekkers and 32 porters. And so all the gear that has to go up there is quite amazing. Things like tents, cook tents, some porta potty kinds of things, because everything has to be carried out almost. That's a lot of the people that were with us. The gal on the left was from Hawaii and we call it Iron Man person. Her friend was also Iron Man. A young guy behind was a marathoner. Basically, everybody was about 25 years younger than me at the time. Next slide. This is the first day we went up to what we call the forest camp. So that after check-in, we had a 2.5 hour, 3 hour trek, and we pitched tents at the forest tent, and you can forest entrance. And that begins really the start of the trek. Here we're actually, you carry your own water. And so what they do is they get the water out of the various streams that are around the area. And then we all carry our own little portable water purifiers. And it's basically a pump that goes through a micron filter. And I tried it out before I went just to see how it worked. I stuck it in a absolutely dirt brown creek. And within a couple pumps, I had pure crystal clear water, and it actually tasted very good. So you carry all that with you. Next slide. This is now coming through from the forest. We're getting started to get in some of the heather areas. And this This is here, you can see it's about 5, 6 feet tall. Actually, at the first beginning of it, it starts out 7 to 10 feet. And as you go up in altitude, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter till finally it's just dusty and it all disappears. This is now the plateau at the end of the first day. And I forgot to mention, we started at an altitude at the forest entrance at 5,900 feet. We're now at about 9,000 feet. This is the first night, and you can see everybody's starting to get the warmer clothing on because the temperature drops very quickly. And those are our tents. The little green tent on the right was the mess tent. So each person had their own little tent, and then you'd go in there for dinner, and the food was incredible. I can't imagine how they pulled it all off, given they have to carry all this stuff up the mountain. Here we are inside the mess tent, and you can see the crew. Everybody right now you see is smiling and happy. We're only at 9,500 feet. And as you'll see in the presentation, the look on the faces starts to change as we get with altitude, especially the young lady there. This is leaving that morning. Now we're going across what they call the Shira Plateau. And so of the 7 camps, there's Shira 1, Shira 2, and others as that we'll get into it. And you can see that's where we're heading. Kilimanjaro, that's the top. What's interesting is I happened to look at some old notes. And in 2008, they said the glaciers, because of climate change, would be probably gone in 2020. And so I went in just today just to look up and see what really did happen. They're still there. But in the last 80 years, 85% of all the glaciers on the mountain have disappeared. So will they disappear? Yes, it's just a little bit longer, but it's maybe another 10 years and it's all gone. And next slide. This is waking up that next morning on the plateau, and you can see all the frost there. The little green thing in the back, at certain camps, they actually have a little restroom area. So you didn't always have to have a porta potty. In some of the camps, they don't have that provided by the government, so you have to have a porta potty. Okay, next. This is now, as we're leaving the plateau, you start to see the kind of trails we're on. We're getting through the clouds, and it's a lot of scrambling and rocks and what have you, kind of hiking. Next. Again, there's more pictures of the terrain as you're moving up the mountain. Okay, this is the next camp. This is the Shira Camp 2. And at this area, you can see all these other tents. What's going on here is this is a staging area, much like a lot of expeditions, since they have multiple trails, depending where people are coming on, which trail they're on, they all have this one big area that everybody camps out. We essentially got our own little area and camped there for the night. Okay, next. This is now a little bit closer view as we're coming out of the heather and all that and heading towards the mountain, which is straight in front of us. That's again, now you're in what they call the Barranco zone, and the Barranco plain or plateau is a large plateau, and you can see Kilimanjaro is right behind us. That route there where you see where it goes straight up, we didn't do that route. That's for somebody that's really advanced. So that's, people do that route, but not us. We did what you basically call Western. You keep circling around the mountain and then come up the backside. Next. Another views of that. You can see the terrain is just spectacular when you're up there. You're up above the clouds. We're at about 12,000 feet right now. That's about, you have these what they call volcanic pinnacles, and they're all over from when the mountain did erupt many years ago. Next. That one there was a little challenge, and this is called the lava tower. You can see our tents. Our mess tent is the green one, and our little pup tents we're in the orange ones. If you look very close at the top of that pinnacle, see those little people up there? That was an optional climb that the guide said, if you want to get another almost 900 feet of altitude under you, because what you do to acclimate, you go up, then you come down 800 feet. Then the next guy, you go up a little higher, then you come down a little bit, then you go up. So it's like a seesaw to build the acclimatization into your body. So I volunteered to go up, and I was nicknamed the captain since I volunteered. And then I got half of our crew to go up there with us. And so you'll see some of our little challenges to get up. That's what we were climbing to get up there. And there were 3 transition points where I did not take out my camera because it was so sheer and so narrow. I was afraid I'd fall off the thing. So at that point, I think is when I decided, after Kilimanjaro, I don't think I'm ever going mountain climbing again. This is the view from the top looking down on our tents. And so I snuck over there, and if you have fear of heights, that one started to spook me a bit, looking over that thing. This is, again, now we're doing regular hiking the next day, and you can see the kind of terrain we have to hike and walk over. It was not just a nice little trail. And those are what they call Kilimanjaro palm trees. They call it their Sensia palm, unique to that area. Okay, there's more of our hike as we're going up. You can see some of the porters are with us, and we're intermixed with them. And you're climbing through that kind of rock and stuff on the trails. Okay, this is now we're at about 13,000, almost 14,000 feet there, and you can see the clouds well below us. That's Mount Maiwani across the way there. Okay, next one. That's sunset that night. Okay. There's the mountain. Now you can see we're really up and getting out of all the plants, and that's the next part of our climb. Will start to have to be quite steep as we go up the side of the mountain there on the right. And that's the plane. Is what we did is we walk up that plane, go all the way to the far right, which you see is the shallower ascent, and that's the way we'll go up next. That's now looking across to the other mountain. That's the camping that night. And that night it really got cold. We're about 15,000 feet right now. The issue, or not an issue, but a thing that was amazing to me was at night. For those of you who've been on dive boats, you can see how good the sky looks. I've never in my life seen a sky like you see when you're that far up, and no light pollution or anything around. It was absolutely spectacular. Next. Now you can see everybody has calmed down a little bit. There are no smiling faces there. We are now getting ready. We're about 17,000 feet there. And this is when the altitude hits you. You can't imagine what we have. And the way you walk is you take about one step, about a foot, you rest, then you take one more step, rest, one more step, rest. And from 17,000 feet on, it's an incredible, it becomes a total mental challenge at that point. Next. Here we are now at just above, right before we get to 18,000 feet, and we're looking back, and you can see some of the scenery, some of the glaciers there. There are multiple glaciers up on the mountain. There's not just one. Okay. Another view of the same, looking down. There we are resting again, and we're resting to get our cue as far as to get up to the camp where we're going to set base camp up. Okay. That right there that's the top of the mountain. That little arrow is pointing to the biggest thrill you ever see, is that one sign that says you made it to the top of the mountain. That right there is 18,500 feet. And it took us to go to the peak of 19.3, almost 5 hours. At the pace we were going, and I can tell you, that's again reinforced why I was not going to do any more high altitude mountain climbing. We lost 2 people, not dead, but that couldn't make it. One was taken down. The young lady then basically had to sit down. And so what the guides told us was, if anybody has to fall behind, leave them. We have guides here who will take care of them. You need to continue the trek because of the timing and everything else. This is now we're at basically at the summit, and you can see the glaciers surrounding us. That's me, and glaciers around us near the summit there. Again, that's us walking the last part's just gravel. At the top, it's flat. Okay. There's more of the glaciers. Okay. More of the glaciers there at the top. That's us just resting at the top, taking in the glaciers. That's the crew that made it. You can see the young gal on the right. We waited for her, and 40 minutes later, she came and made the ascent. So we all cheered her as she came in. Okay, next. And there I am, no lie, I'm right there. That's what you see at the top of the mountain. 19,300 feet. Next. Then after that, you leave the top and you get ready to start do your descent. So see that mountain behind us and you see the rock stuff there on the side? That's how we got down. So that's now, our tents there are 18,800 feet. And so we stayed up at the top of the mountain about 20 minutes. Then the guide says, okay, everybody go. And so you scrambled down that rock slide. That was probably one of the hardest things because it's just loose gravel and you kept feeling, oh my God, I'm gonna if you get rolling and fall, but that's how we came down and set the tents up there. Okay, next. I couldn't resist since the glacier is on. This is called the ash pit. The glacier is actually right there. So I wanted to walk over with one of the other guys and actually go over and touch the glacier. So next few pictures show that. That's getting closer to the glacier. I'm actually touching it. That icicle, I broke it off. Shame on me, and ate it. I had to eat one. And more of the glacier, you can see how things are melting and cracking and breaking off. And this was 2008. Okay. More pictures. Just stunning up there. Now, this is, we got up there, and now we come down the next day. And one comment about that campsite. Remember I said you have to carry things out? That night it was 20 below zero at 18,008, and one of the guides had a thermometer. I was in a tent, okay? I had long underwear on, 3 different shirts, a pullover, my Arctic polo and also in a 0-degree sleeping bag, and I still froze. One of the things that you had to do, and women would carry a Tupperware bowl. A man had an Nalgene bottle. I had to fill my Nalgene bottle that night in my tent. And unfortunately, I had to carry down a frozen Nalgene bottle with urine in it all the way down the mountain because you're not allowed to dump it. And so the end, that's it. It was a happy ending, and I went on my safari.